Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but I would say these guys have built a very strong reputation for themselves, and when it comes to beer styles, they are probably best known for their different kinds of IPAs, mainly New England hazies, but we have seen a few other things from them over the years too. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from them before. It's a style that I know these guys can do very, very well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. It's one of their latest releases from what I understand, and it's always nice to check out their new beers. So hopefully this is another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Hokuto, which is in Yamanashi Prefecture, out to the west of Tokyo, the Japanese capital, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Uchu Brewing, or Space Brewing, as you would say in English. So this particular beer is called Cosmic Dream. This, I believe, is the third iteration of the Cosmic Dream beer. There have been a few other batches as well, but this particular variety comes in at 8.5% ABV. It's a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and this one is batch number 581. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. Once again, this beer was bought from liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Maichi in Osaka, who supply me with most of my Japanese beers. Big shout out to Koji and Rika up there, of course. So check out the link to their Facebook page in the video description below, and they've always got some really nice stuff. So if you find yourself in Osaka, do go and check them out. But let's crack on with this beer then and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews then, pardon me, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Uchu Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it takes your fancy. Just go into the channel homepage, use the search bar, type in the geography that you want, and if I've reviewed beers from that area, they will hopefully pop up. And remember, you can also check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and we'll be adding to that regularly over the next little while. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Uchu Brewing. Let me just clear my throat again. There we go. Yeah, my throat's a bit weird today, guys. I have no idea what's going on with it. But anyway, so, Uchu Brewing, as I've told you before, were founded back in 2017 by Masahiro Kusunose and Rumiko Suzuki. So these guys both came from a background in agriculture, and they first encountered craft beer on the US West Coast, and they found that they loved the different personalities that each brewery had, and they wanted to bring something like this, their own take on it, back to Japan. So Masahiro is the main brewer, and Rumiko mainly does the marketing and business side of things, but she also takes part in the brewing and the farming. So we'll get on to that. But these guys actually started their farming activities back in 2009 under the name Space Farmers, and they grew rice and vegetables without pesticides. But in 2016 they started planting hops, and they've got their own hop fields right next to the brewery, and they often hand pick some of the hops that go into their beers, as well as importing things from, the US, Australia, New Zealand and stuff like this. But today they also run miso making and rice paddy workshops, and they've got a whole host of different activities that they do. They're quite educational from what I can gather when it comes to teaching people about how to do agriculture. So that's something that's really kind of stuck with them as well. But they built their own brewery in Hokuto in Yamanashi Prefecture, as I mentioned earlier, and a substantial amount of the funding for this actually came from crowdfunding, and much of the construction itself was actually DIY. They've got a tap room on site these days, and they're now working to distribute their beers a bit further afield. But the name Uchu Brewing, as I mentioned earlier, translates into English as space brewing, and that's obviously taken from their agriculture activities that they had before, and so most of their beers are named after like space, astronomical, whatever you want to call them, type themes. So yeah, you've seen these beers on the channel maybe 5 or 6 times now if memory serves me correctly, but like I say, this is quite a prolific brewery. mainly known for their different kinds of IPAs. We've had West Coasts, we've had New Englands. I think we've also had a black IPA from these guys at one stage as well, and I'm sure we tried an Imperial Stout a couple of years ago too, but it's been about 3 years since we tried a beer from them, so hopefully they are as good as I remember, because I was quite impressed with these at the time. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Uchu Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So this one is a 330 milliliter can, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, telling you lies, it's 350. 350 of course tends to be the standard in Japan. I just thought this one looked a little bit smaller actually, but yeah, 350 milliliters. This one, like I mentioned earlier, this is the third iteration of the Cosmic Dream beer. This one is batch number 581. It's hopped with Citra and Mosaic, which we know quite well. Both of these hops are American, both 14% alpha acid. Citra is going to give you that nice kind of pungent passion fruit, but also a good little bit of juicy mango, and then Mosaic on the other hand is going to give you a kind of tangerine orangey character. But yeah, like I say, this is batch number 581. The other versions of this beer were batch number 382. This was 8.5% with some Galaxy and Victoria's Secret in it as well. And then there was batch number 447, which was only 8% ABV, and that was Citra and Mosaic. And I think they used Incognito and Cryo Citra in that one as well. I believe this one might well just be pellets, but it didn't say in the little blurb on the website. It just said Citra and Mosaic, so I'm guessing probably just pellets in this one, but I might be wrong. Correct me on that in the comment section below if I am. But yeah, you can see plain silver top on the can there. As we say, it does look pretty nice. Yeah, this is the first beer I'm reviewing from a can from these guys as well. I think they started canning maybe about a year and a bit ago, something like that, because the last beers we reviewed from Uchu Brewing were bottles, of course, and I did manage to keep some of the bottle caps from them. But yeah, 8.5% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is triple dry hopped as well, so let's get it out into the glass and see what we have. Really looking forward to this. The can, obviously, got a little bit excited there. Didn't expect it to open quite as easily as that. So yeah, lost a little bit on my hand, as you can see. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. Again, I do apologise for my voice in this video. A little bit of a kind of tickly cough in the throat today, so probably shouldn't be drinking beer, but I need to get through some of these ones before I leave Japan again. So yeah, anyway, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England Hazy IPA. You can see that when we poured the beer, it poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said kind of cream coloured head. That has just faded away to be a very thin foamy layer now, and there's a bit of a ring around the edge of the glass. But it does look pretty nice, as I say. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, but overall it does look pretty nice. In terms of the colour of this one, I would describe it as being a very kind of rich yellow. It reminds me a bit of a mango juice. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different kinds of fruit juices because that's just what they remind me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of your beer too. But yeah, in the case of most IPAs, you don't often have to care about that. It is just the kind of type of malts that you use. But the level of haziness in this one, I have to say, is pretty impressive. This is one of the soupier and gloopier New England doubles that I've come across in recent times, and we have had ones around this percentage quite a bit actually. 8.5% is quite a prominent percentage these days. But yeah, this one certainly has a good little bit of soupiness and gloopiness to it. Remember, the haze in these beers depends on the oat content, the wheat content, and to a degree the yeast. But yeah, pretty damn impressive in this one, I have to say. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, so I think that's everything we need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's go on and have a little look at the aroma. So annoying, I have to say, it is just so annoying. But yeah, aroma time. let's see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Yeah. So first impression of this one, I have to say, is very, very good. For me, this is quite an oat leaning, it's quite an oaty leaning, soft and juicy, grassy New England IPA, this one. As I've always said, for me there are 6 elements you should think about when it comes to New England IPAs. There's 6 flavour elements. So sometimes you get a sort of farmhousey, yeasty character. You also get that kind of riding and grainy note. That's a bit more common. Those two are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs, but you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and you've also got the kind of sweet side of things as well. But this beer for me, as I said, really leans toward that more oaty, creamy sort of thing just from the aroma. We'll need to see whether that's reflected in the flavour, of course, because these beers, New Englands, can actually vary quite a bit between aroma and flavour. I've found that with them quite a lot over the years. But yeah, for me, the aroma of this one is quite oaty and creamy. It's got a good little bit of barley malt to it as well. The green component is quite relaxed in this one, but it's got a very soft, fruity, juicy character to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of cryo or incognito, mosaic and citra within what they've used in the hop bill in this beer. But it does smell very, very nice, so it gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Let's just break this down though and describe the aroma for you a wee bit more in depth. Yeah, that is nice. That is nice. So, where do we start with this one then? So, the backbone of the beer, you get a little touch of a fresh, white bready bread crust in this one. I really do like that about this beer. So, soft, fresh, white bready bread crust. It smells as if you've got a little bit of the flour just still on the bread crust. You know, it's come straight from the bakery. There are 1 or 2 little woody notes to this one as well. I'm getting a little bit of that smooth, woody character in this one. In this beer, the more that you smell of it, the oats actually start to become a little bit sweeter, I find, which is quite interesting. But yeah, above the bread crust, you've got some smooth kind of Jacob's cream crackery notes. You've also got that soft, you know, white bready, bread crusty note as well. So yeah, fresh white bread crust, a little touch of wood, some Jacob's cream cracker. On top of that, as I say, soft, fluffy white bread coming out of this one. So yeah, soft, fluffy white bread in there. You've also got like a little bit of a more dense white bread on top of that. I would say that's probably wheat that's giving you that. The wheat, I always find that wheat really densifies these New England IPAs, which is the point, of course. But the wheat in this one isn't really zippy or bitey. It's actually very, very smooth. But above that, you certainly get the nice big creamy oaty characters out of the beer. And as I've always said, when it comes to oaty character in New England IPAs, it's always a very good indicator of how old your beer is. The drier the oats smell, the older the beer is, the more creamy they smell, the fresher the beer is. But this beer is really kind of creamy and really kind of just creamy and smooth. You can really smell that right away in this one. But on top of the oaty characters, you certainly have, pardon me, you've certainly got some lovely sweetness in there. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of golden promise in this one. I'm getting a little touch of a sort of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch type quality out of this beer. There's a wee bit of that, but there's also a little touch of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice on the malty side of things. But yeah, oaty and creamy, I think, is a good way to describe the malty side of this one. Let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer and see what we have. So yeah, when it comes to the green component, like I said, this beer for me, it's not too kind of assuming, it's not too sort of punchy within the green component. As I've said before in these reviews, there are 3 different kinds of hopping. Early edition hopping within the first hour of your wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness. Late edition hopping, last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping gives you, it's all about flavour and aroma, which yeah, this is the thing. But when it comes to New England IPAs, they tend to rely on the latter 2. West Coast IPAs use all 3. I get the feeling from this one that it's maybe exclusively late edition and dry hopping. Sometimes New England's use a little bit of early edition hopping, but yeah, the green component in this one is very, very smooth. There's a little tiny bit of earthiness to it. You have got a little bit of floral character in there, but for me, it is more like a kind of fresh, slightly zesty, grassy character that comes out of this one. So yeah, aroma-wise, this beer is pretty nice on the green component, but very, very smooth, as I said. So in terms of the fruity side of the beer, it is what you would expect, you know, from these two hops. We do know Citra and Mosaic quite well. You cannot go wrong with this mix. With this one, I would say the Citra is showing its kind of juicier side, but you have got a little bit. You do get a little touch of the pungent passion fruit. I wouldn't go as far as grapefruit with it though. But yeah, a little bit of pungent passion fruit, some soft mango-y notes. You've also got a bit of apricot and papaya in there as well. And yeah, apricot, papaya, a little bit of juicy mango, and also a nice bit of passion fruit too. So yeah, aroma-wise, the tropical side of this beer is really nice. But you are going to notice with this beer, it does have a good little bit of citrusy character to it as well, but that takes a wee bit of time just to show its, just to show face, if you like. So for me, there's definitely a nice little bit of an oily tangerine character to this one, a little touch of lime in there as well, and yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer, I think, is very, very nice. So as I said, that gets a big thumbs up from me. I think the fruity side of this beer, it's just very, very soft and very, very juicy actually, and that's in keeping with the kind of creaminess, the smooth green component. Yeah, everything goes together very, very nicely in this one. So I think this beer is pretty damn nice actually, just from its aroma perspective. So I think we can leave it at that for the aroma. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy that before you get stuck in, but I do think it's time to taste this beer. So this one is the Cosmic Dream, batch number 581, an 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Uchu Brewing in Yamanashi Prefecture, Hokuto City, out to the west of Tokyo, here in Japan. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, kampai. Yeah, that's pretty nice. I think I'm drinking this one very, very fresh. I will say, I maybe should have left this, ideally, I think I maybe should have left this one in the can like a week longer or so, just to let it mellow out. I think this was a very recent arrival at Koji's shop, but you can taste with this one, it still has that kind of dusty green note to it. It's triple dry hopped, of course, we do need to remember that, but this beer is very, very fresh. I've always said with New England, you do need to let these kind of mellow out a little bit. But yeah, with this one, it's a pretty damn solid New England double IPA. I know that these guys do that. I'm not surprised, but yeah, it's certainly nice to return to this brewery after quite a wee while. But I will say this one's got a good bit more kind of floral kick to it, and it also has a bit more wheat than the aroma would have had you believe. But yeah, again, solid beer from Uchu Brewing, but not surprised. Yeah, this one, the thing I've often found with the Uchu beers is they often have quite a punchy impact flavour, but the way these mellow out and kind of wetten up and just juicing up is lovely. You know, I really like how that, I really like how all of that goes together in this particular beer. The way that everything just kind of mellows out, juicens up, yeah, it really does work. So yeah, I think this gets a thumbs up from me. So for me, again, a bit more wheaty bitiness, good little bit of floral green component to it, I would say. But yeah, it has everything else that we talked about in the aroma too. So let's break this beer down and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. Yeah, lovely. So, middle third of your palate then. You can feel, particularly into the aftertaste, you get a little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust there. That just forms the backbone of the beer. So yeah, a little touch of fresh white bready bread crust. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, there is a little touch of woodiness to this one. And then you will get one or two very slight Jacob's cream crackery notes out of it. The crackery notes are nowhere near as kind of prominent as I thought they were going to be, based on the aroma of the beer. Actually, it's a lot more subtle, but above that you certainly get more of a kind of fresh white bready barley malt coming out of this one. So the fresh white bready barley malt for me is quite it is really kind of soft and kind of fluffy, but you can certainly feel above the kind of white barley bread that the barley malt bread is actually quite a thin layer in this one. I would say it's not the tallest or most dense, but yeah, you do have a little bit of that fluffy white bread in there, but the wheat comes in above that and sort of densifies it all out, and the wheat certainly has a little bit more kind of zip to it and a little bit more kind of bite almost, compared to, you know, we weren't really picking up any wheat in the aroma. Actually, I really thought in the aroma this beer was more kind of oaty leaning actually. So yeah, the way that goes together is pretty nice. But yeah, the more that you drink of this beer, the more your palate kind of adjusts and the flavour starts to lean toward that oaty side of things. So yeah, you've got the wheaty layer, like I said, and it's got a bit of density to it and a bit of smoothness, and it does get smoother the further into the aftertaste you go, but in the beginning, like I said, this beer has a bit of a punchy flavour to it. It does have a wee bit of zip, but yeah, down the middle of that, the middle line of your palate there, you've got a lovely kind of creamy oaty note to this one, and this beer is very, very fresh. You can tell that straight away from the oats. So you've got that lovely kind of creamy, almost slightly porridgey oaty character going down the middle of your palate. On top of that, you get a slightly more dense and smooth creamy oatiness, and as you push out toward the edge of that middle third of your palate, yeah, you get a little bit more kind of dryness. You do get a little bit more of a kind of oaty dryness out of the beer. But yeah, the more you drink of this, I do get more and more of the oaty sweetness in this. But yeah, like I say, the key difference for me between this beer on the malty side of things is the wheat, the presence of the wheat. I think we've said everything we need to about that middle third of the palate actually. This beer doesn't have a great degree of sweetness to it. I mean, in the dead centre of your palate, there's potentially a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. That's the booziness out of the beer. So there's a little bit of that going on, but otherwise it's pretty, it is pretty kind of straightforward. Yeah, in terms of the back third of the palate then, so the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. White bread, of course. Base of the back third of your palate, you've got some nice, you do have some really nice kind of more grainy bread crusty characters. On top of that, you get a little bit more cracker as well, and you can feel that the barley malt white bread layer is certainly taller and a little bit more airy, but then you've got the wheat layer above that, which has certainly got a bit more kind of bitiness to it. So the wheat is more smooth in the middle third of your palate, but it's got a little bit more bitiness to it the further back on the palate you go, and that's common, of course. Sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more bitter and bitey flavours come out further back. But yeah, above the wheaty layer, you start to get more of the kind of yeasty, esters coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, nice little bit of wheaty. Above the wheat, you get a little bit of this more kind of farmhousey bread. It's got a little touch of honeycomb to it, a little bit of fluffy white bread, little touch of woodiness almost as well. So yeah, the more farmhousey bready notes above the sort of McVitie's. Not the McVitie's. There is almost a little bit of the McVitie's digestive flavour in that bready note as well. But yeah, above the wheaty bitey layer, bit of farmhousey bread, a little bit of honeycomb, little touch of wood, a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. It's quite interesting. So yeah, the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down and squashes together. But let's go on to the hoppy side of this beer then, which arguably is the most important when we're talking IPAs, but I always think having a good malt base is essential too. But yeah, green component first then. Yeah, so back corners of the palate, there's a little touch of earthiness to this one for sure. As you move further forward, you get a little bit of a kind of herbal quality with this beer, but the earthiness is most likely to come from the mosaic. I think that's definite. So a little touch of earthiness in there, a little bit of herbal character, and as you push further forward, you start to get more and more kind of floral aromaticity. And the green component is a little bit more. The green component is a little bit more kind of. Yeah, it has got quite a pungent floral note to it, but you have to remember this, I say this beer is triple dry hopped, and I think we were drinking it very, very fresh. Sometimes with the New Englands, as I say, you need to let them mellow just a little bit more, leave them in the can a wee bit and let them mellow out. But yeah, you do have a nice little bit of floral aromaticity to this beer. It's not too spicy, it's quite smooth and quite bright. As I said to you before, if you use early edition hopping, you get more of a kind of dank, deep green component to the beer, but this one's definitely brighter and more... it's definitely more kind of bright and floral in its notes, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more kind of, it's definitely a wee bit lighter and more sort of grassy. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is very nice from the green component perspective. You do get a little bit more of a kind of zesty character out of it. So yeah, the green component for me is quite nice on this one. That lingers into the aftertaste. A bit of that bright floral aromaticity and also the kind of zesty, grassy character. But let's look at the front third of the palate then and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that white bready build up in there. The base of the front third of your palate, a little touch of bread crust, a little bit of smooth, as I say, a little bit of a kind of smooth white bready character in there, but you can feel some of the oats creeping forward there as well. And then above that, of course, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, in terms of the fruity esters from this beer, for me, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get that more pungent passion fruity note from the citra. Absolutely, a little bit more of that pungent, yeah, thing there. But then as you move further forward, it mellows out and gives you a juicier passion fruit. Then as you move into the kind of middle, as you move further forward from that, I should say, you get a nice juicy mango-y element. And as you reach the kind of as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of apricot underneath, a little bit of papaya, and above that you've got a wee touch of pineapple. So yeah, I think the way this beer goes together is really nice on the tropical side of things. But as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you definitely get more of the mosaic coming out of the beer. So yeah, front half of the front third of your palate is more about the tangerine orange and the mosaic. And underneath that, just as you reach the front tip of the tongue, you will get a little bit more of a kind of lemon limey character, which is quite common from Citra as well. Citra can really show you a bit of lemon limey character, especially in New England's. So yeah, the way that side of the beer goes together is also quite interesting too. So it gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, the fruity notes in this are very nice. A little bit of passion fruit, as I say. Yeah, a little touch of passion fruit, lovely juicy mango. Then you've also got a wee bit of a lemon limey character too. So yeah, I think this beer deserves a big thumbs up from me once again. It's a classic, you know, this an 8.5% Citra Mosaic New England Double IPA. It's again a classic beer, if you like, these days. It's a kind of go-to when it comes to the New England style. But Uchu always do it very well. There's so many New Englands on the market these days, you can't really ask for much more than that. As I say, the only criticism I would give of this beer would be to myself, and that would be to let this mellow out a little bit more. But I didn't have time to do that, unfortunately. But yeah, another very, very nice New England Double IPA from Uchu. in my opinion. But just maybe just a little touch too fresh, as odd as that is to say. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, just to round off this review. Yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer for me, pushing toward the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. This beer actually has a big creaminess to it, but it almost has a little touch of oily character to it as well, which is kind of interesting. I'm trying to think if I've had a few other beers from Yamanashi. I want to say Iwate Kura are from Yamanashi as well, and their beers always had this kind of oily mouthfeel to them as well. But yeah, I think this beer, as I said, it is very, very nicely done, so it gets my respect in that regard. But yeah, it really just has this mix of oily and creamy character. In terms of IBUs, I think this is maybe about 40-ish IBUs. It isn't overly bitter. I wouldn't be surprised if it's only 30, but I think because it's so fresh, you just get quite a bit of that green component still there. So it comes across as if it's about 40 IBUs. The malt base, as we said, has a bit of graininess to it. It's also got a bit of smoothness, a little bit of sweetness and a bit of creaminess as well. Yeah, and the fruity character, a mix between tropical and more citrusy side of things, Citra Mosaic. It's a classic combination, to be honest with you. But yeah, certainly the main difference between this beer in terms of aroma and flavour profile would be the prominence of the wheat. The wheat has a bit more bitiness to it than the aroma would have you believe. Pardon me, like I said, another very, very solid beer from Uchu Brewing, and I think that's all we need to say about this one, to be honest with you. So yeah, this one was the Cosmic Dream, the third iteration of Cosmic Dream, I should add, batch number 581 from Uchu Brewing in Hokuto City, Yamanashi Prefecture, out to the west of Tokyo here in Japan. This is definitely a brewery to watch out for. I hope these guys start to get their beers out there a little bit more for the world to see, because these guys they've got quite an interesting story, of course, and they are doing some really really nice stuff, I have to say. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Uchu Brewing. We will return to these guys at some point soon, I'm sure. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Uchu Brewing social media, support your local breweries, and do give me some more Japanese beer and brewery recommendations in the comment section below. But until the next time, Slanjit Skull, cheers. This was a pretty awesome New England double IPA, but that's what we've come to expect from this brewery. Kampai.